recording. Okay, so officially welcome to the session. My name is Omashni Naidu. I will be taking you through this hopefully interactive session, but we'll see how the weather plays out. Okay, I see we have quite a lovely sort of response from various parts of South Africa, which is really wonderful to see. But we'll share some of that in a little while, but most of you will be able to see via the Padlet as well. Okay, so I'm hoping I'm sharing my PowerPoint with you as a start. Right, so remote learning. I trust that all of you are keeping well and you're keeping safe and keeping your physical distance. But social distancing, I think, yeah, is a thing of the past to be keeping in touch via social media as well as being online. So, right, so our remote learning aspects, the first aspect that we need to be considering is that there must be balance. And if you look at the three circles in the middle of this diagram, it's sort of looking at how do we balance pedagogical teaching, the way we teach, with the content we've got to teach, along with the technology skills that we may or may not have. And I think the whole element around balance is key for us. And when you look at this diagram, the three circles are actually representative of something called the Tpack model. And the Tpack model is basically saying that, sorry, Quinn?
We can't see your screen.
You can't see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, let me just,
yes.
Let me try again. Sorry. Okay, let me just share it again. Are you able to see now?
So it's not the one that...
Somebody very cute is talking.
Sorry.
No, don't stress. It's all good. Okay, so I'm hoping that you can see my screen, which is the second slide of my PowerPoint. Wait.
We still can't see it.
All right, let me share again.
It's
okay.
Blank.
So, what a weird thing. All right, let me share again.
I can see it.
Oh, and just as you said that, I clicked somewhere else. Okay, let's go again. All right, are you there?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, right, cool. All right, thanks so much, Lengi. Right, so getting started on the digital and remote learning journey, one is be very patient with yourself. Understand that the technology is not going to work all the time. The sound, I think one of our first sessions was that we had the sound on, you know, prior to the workshop. And then when we started the workshop, immediately the sound stopped working. So understand that. Be patient with yourself and understand that it's okay. Whatever experience you have, it's going to be okay. And you just take it from there, you know, play it by ear. The first element around working in an online space and remote learning is to achieve balance. And for you as our teachers and learning design sort of experts, and when I say experts, you are the custodian of the learning. And whether you feel that you're an expert or not in terms of digital learning, that's a different conversation, but you are an expert of the content that you are teaching. So the three circles that are here on this diagram is basically representative of something called the Tpack model. T meaning technological skills, P meaning pedagogy, and then the content knowledge. And together, all three of these elements means that you teach the curriculum content that you've got to teach in a sound pedagogical sort of manner in terms of scaffolding the learning using technological skills. And whilst we know that teachers are masters of the classroom, where you are trained as a teacher or you have a degree in a certain aspect where you are either trained in pedagogy and content, which is what a teacher does, but not all of our teachers are sort of skilled in both. So some of you might have just degrees where you have the theoretical understanding and the content for certain subjects. But now when you start bringing all three together, it's trying to get the content that you're trying to teach in a pedagogically sound way using technological tools at your disposal. And that's a very good, difficult task, because when you've been used to either just doing the content and the pedagogy, which are the two left circles, if you look, just having content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge on its own is wonderful, but it's not good enough just yet, because when we're moving into the space of the fourth industrial revolution, and I know this is a buzzword that many people use, the challenge we have is that we've got to make sure that our children coming out of the schooling and basic education particularly come out with skills around digital savviness, digital literacy, media literacy. And basically, when they finish school, they need to be savvy enough that they can go into higher education institutions without issue. They can go into the world of work without issue, or be self-seeking in terms of employment and entrepreneurship, which is why technology skills must be included in the whole mix of things. And mind you, I'll be the first one to say, yes, education is not dependent on technology, but it is required at the moment, particularly for our children, in terms of the skills they need to be economic and social activity. And this is most especially the case for when we are now in a remote learning space. And the conversation at the moment is that potentially this lockdown may be extended. So if we're looking at ways in which we can do that, we've got to try and balance all three parts in a very efficient way. And how to do this is going to be the key element. Now, when we look at South African policies and frameworks that are available, one of the key sort of learnings at the moment is the framework for digital learning, which is a publication which is brand new in terms of Department of Basic Education, but it is the 2018 resource, and basically says that teachers need to build competencies in digital learning. And what that means is there must be a progressive understanding and awareness of the use of digital tools in the classroom, and there must be a way in which we transform pedagogical skills using these digital tools in order for the content to be taught in creative and engaging ways. And basically that's saying that when we have balance of technology, content, and pedagogy, this is where we're actually transforming pedagogical skills. We're transforming the way teaching is done and the way learning is done in the classroom. And that's what we want to be achieving. To just go forward, I know it's a little bit theoretical, but I just need to ensure that all of us are of the same background. And in terms of the policies and frameworks for the country at the moment, it's sort of saying that the lowest level is level 1, where at the moment we are looking at just basic teaching, where the teacher is still standing in the front, the teacher is the custodian of all of the learning, and basically the teacher is the body of all knowledge, which is level 1, the red circle on the bottom left. But where we want to get to is the greeny circle, which is column D right at the top, where it's saying that digital learning is a full range of digital interactions on a deep level, where the learner-to-learner interaction, there's collaboration, there's there's dialogue in terms of the learning that's happening. And how do we achieve that? Because what we're wanting is to ensure that the child is able to display their learning in some shape or form. And, typically we get kids to do that by writing summaries. We get them to articulate by doing projects, to write tests, and our teacher sees that by having observations. But when we start looking at technology skills and tools, we start saying, can a child use digital tools in some shape or form to display their understanding, where it's not just in the print form anymore? It's looking at ways in which the child can actually showcase their learning using video pockets, maybe using a podcast, maybe where they were writing an essay, they now writing a publication for a magazine or for a newspaper. So you're changing the sort of conversation around how children showcase their learning. And that's what we're trying to get to. Deeper learning and digital learning is looking at ways in which the child's learning is foregrounded, but using digital tools while still teaching in a pedagogically sound way the content that needs to be discussed. So the first thing is planning. Have we got our planning in place? And for many teachers, and you'll see that the spectrum of teachers is quite deeply varied and very diverse. And in South Africa, we have one of the most diverse sort of communities of people in education, because it ranges from somebody not knowing anything about digital to ones being really savvy and really being innovative with the way in which technology is being used in the teaching and learning dynamic. So planning is one of the key sort of elements. So whichever sort of skill set you're in, you must be able to plan. And planning can take the form of many things, but the essential part is you must know what you're teaching. You must be thinking about how you're going to be teaching it, what you're going to be teaching, basically the basic questions of thinking around teaching and learning. Now, when you design learning, there's a number of ways, and I've added these as resources for you to actually listen to, or there's videos that Kun sent earlier in terms of links. So when you're designing learning, we use the same design principles that instructional design people use, and there's a number of models for that, and you'll have to find one that you like. But I just thought we needed to just discuss very briefly what these different models might look like. And the ADDIE model is one of the famous ones that have been used across time, and it's basically saying that ADDIE is an acronym basically saying first you start with the analysis, then you do the design, you do development, implementation, and evaluation. So basically you analyze the situation, you design a learning pocket, you do some development in terms of the activities, you implement means you teach, and then you do an evaluation. So basically this is the cycle of how the learning should happen in your classroom. But that's just one model. When you look at Gagne's events of instruction, there's 9 events of instruction that says, firstly, we need to be looking at preparation. Then you're looking at instruction and practice. And the third is assessment, transfer, and basically be applying your knowledge. So if you're thinking about Bloom's taxonomy, you're thinking about these elements, you're thinking about how do you grow a child from whatever level they're at to a level of what they need, and a need for now in terms of content, skills, and knowledge that we're wanting our children to get is no longer just the low level where they've got to just know the facts. They must be able to take those facts and be able to apply it in some shape or form within the context of their own learning. And until they can apply it, we can't say that knowledge is actually gained in the dynamic. When you're looking at the Ashura model, this is one of our favorite models. So you'll see basically the Ashura model is also instructional design. It says, analyze the learner's characteristics, state the objectives, select and modify design materials, utilize these materials in the learning dynamic, require a learner response, and then you evaluate. And evaluation takes the sort of position of multiple things: evaluation of the learner, evaluation of the learning, as well as evaluation of you as a teacher in terms of delivering that particular lesson. But we'll explore what that looks like. So designing learning. Designing learning is very tricky because nobody can come into your context and say, you know, this is how you need to design the learning. Only you are fully aware of what are the available resources you have, what is the content knowledge you have, what are the pedagogical strategies you have at your sort of core foundation, what are the tools you have at your disposal. And then again, depending on the variety of tools and resources you have access to, you'll find that schools that are under-resourced or in underserved areas have less, which means that you may be working with, you know, just WhatsApp as a tool rather than working with Moodle. If you're a higher end sort of school where you have, you know, an unlimited source of resources. So when we're looking at it, I use this very simple lesson design template, and it's basically saying when you're analyzing your learners, you have the statement of objectives, selecting modifiers. So basically you just track down very quickly what it is you're doing. And the key element here is the last two columns, which is saying requiring a learner response and the evaluation. And it says when you are evaluating a child, are you checking that they are demonstrating the knowledge or demonstrating some process or product that shows that they've achieved the outcomes? Because I think when we do lesson planning and you know, when I was teaching as well, you'll state a whole lot of outcomes in the lesson because, you know, you've got your curriculum advisors coming to look at your work. But whether or not you're seeing that child actually making sure that the child has learned what you set out to teach them, that's going to be key. And when you're in an online space, time is very short. So you need to have 1 or 2 outcomes at the most when you are doing that, so that you teach one concept very neatly, concisely, and then you explore that really fully. So when you're evaluating, it becomes easier. If your children are a little bit more digital savvy, maybe you want to do 2 or 3 concepts. That's still okay. But if you're starting out, deal with one concept, deal with it properly and concisely so that you know you've done a good job in terms of explaining what that looks like. So basically, this is a quick sort of, you know, overview in terms of the various sort of elements in terms of how you design, and very quickly you're able to see how and what you've done and included in the lesson. So when you're analyzing your learners, especially in the space of being online, you're now looking at your students, and you may or may not have students who are in informal settlements. You may have kids are in urban areas. So you only can decide who those children are. And you need to be mindful that in a diverse area, you may have a mix of these kids, some that are really well resourced and others that are not. So you've got to plan so that you have enough activities that even a child with limited resources can still do the activities, and perhaps they're displaying and showcasing their learning in a simpler way rather than using any of the more more intricate and more difficult sort of tools to use. So what is a prior experience of technology? So if a child has not used any technology before, you are definitely not going to start them off with Microsoft Teams, for example. If a child has not got their own devices, so now you've got to start thinking about, is there a way that you can share information? So I know my kids, for example, in their primary school, they haven't used a whole lot of technology in school. So what they're doing is the teachers have just emailed PDF worksheets and placed it on the D6 communicator. So that's the extent of their use. So I know in some of our project schools, people are using WhatsApp, where you just plugging in the worksheets into a WhatsApp group with your classes and saying, okay, kids, here's your accounting work for this week. And send me any questions via email. So, you know, you analyze your kids and you try to understand what kind of resources do they have accessible to them, and what might you be able to use in terms of getting them to showcase their learning. And it could very well just be a question that says summarize the topic page 5 to 7 and write out your notes that basically capture these headings. You know, typical sort of elements around what you would usually do in a classroom, and say, okay, here's this new concept of work, do a mind map of the topic. And that becomes evidence that a child can keep in their notebook. And when we go back to school, they're able to then just showcase their mind maps as evidence of work. The second element, which we all know about, is the outcomes. And here, if we're looking at outcomes, we look at how do we create enough sort of varied levels of questioning so that it's not all low level, but being mindful that actually the low level sort of facts and processes and procedures are actually the basis for how one is able to analyze and evaluate and create new work. So the facts, the basic facts are required in terms of a child's understanding. But when you're looking at a product or a process at the end, you're wanting them to be able to showcase the higher order thinking skills in terms of evaluation, creating and analyzing a range of different work. But be mindful that you must do the lower end questions as part of the initial thinking around. So how do we select modified learning activities? When you look at Bloom's in practice, you start saying, okay, what are the kinds of questions that are required? So if you're looking at the remembering, can you recall, who is it, where is it, can you list, can you name? Those are the typical sort of questions. When you're looking at understanding, you're saying constructing meaning from messages. So what ideas, what are the facts telling you? What do you understand? Can you summarize? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? So when you're looking at analyzing, you start looking at comparing and contrasting pros and cons as if you've got a debate, evaluating, applying and creating. I'm sure you're all familiar with these, but if you look at these sort of elements that are here, it's sort of giving you just quick measures in terms of the kinds of questions you should be asking that elicit the higher order thinking questions. And especially now in this remote thinking, you're wanting the kids to work through basic facts, but you're wanting them, more importantly, to formulate their own opinions on what would happen if, what are your thoughts about, reflect on what you've done, because these are tasks that a child can do without needing you to explain a thought. You're wanting them to showcase their comprehension of a particular aspect or a topic, and then you're wanting them to formulate their own discussion points to think about, or you ask them to summarize, where they summarize key facts, and they've got to learn these particular skills around media and digital literacy, and how do they put together pieces of work. So this is Bloom's in practice. Now, some of you may also be familiar with the Pedagogy Wheel. This is Alan Carrington's fantastic Pedagogy Wheel. It's basically saying he bridges a range of different things, and he says, depending on the kind of skill you're wanting your kids to have, there's a range of different tools that can supplement what your goal or your ultimate aim is. So if you're wanting them to remember and to just jot down thoughts, then a very simple online document could work very easily. Or you could get them to complete their tasks, or write in their notebook their thoughts around, read this particular pages from your textbook and write down your thoughts around key facts, summarizing the work. So basic sort of remembering aspects. When you're looking at applying, you say to the child, okay, here's your poetry. Can you dramatize or role play, or to just to have 2 minutes of representation, a video clip or a voice note about what's the main idea in that piece of work that they were summarizing. So the Pedagogy Wheel is really beautiful in terms of giving you just some ideas around if you are wanting a child to describe something, or if you're wanting them to analyze or examine something, then there's a range of different tools that you can use for those purposes. And it does it really beautifully in terms of the SAMR model, which is basically saying, how do you substitute the elements that you're working on? How do you sort of augment the learning? And basically, how do you modify and then redefine what your learning looks like for the classroom? So we're getting to the exciting bits. Now, Kathy Schrock is also, she does it beautifully in terms of saying, Bloom in apps. And what she does is, you'll see that from the bottom going up. So R being remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing. So basically the Bloom sort of taxonomy. And what she's done is she's aligned horizontally all of the various apps that could be used for those particular types of purposes. But you can use apps as superficially or as deeply as you wanting. So you can use like a Google Doc, for example, in a very easy way, which is just getting the kids to type out something, or a more sort of intricate way where you're give the child a piece of text and you say, okay, add your various comments, and this can be your entire class that's reviewing a particular pocket. So you can add the intricacy or the complexity depending on the task, and you can use an app across the various Bloom's sort of levels. What Kathy Schock has done is she's got Android apps, she's got G Suite apps, she's got iPad apps. So there's a range depending on the kinds of technology you have accessible. What I wasn't able to find was a very clear sort of alignment to Microsoft apps. And I know there's a range of different apps, but we'll hopefully have a chance to go through a little more about that in a short while. So the apps are very nicely organized, and it's basically trying to see if you're a Google school and you have access to G Suite for education, then these are the kinds of tools that you would use here on the right hand side as well. So there's a range of different things that are available at your disposal if you're wanting the kids to showcase their learning in some shape or form using digital means. I'm just steamrolling ahead. Are there any questions that need to be asked in the meantime? All right,
No, I think we're still fine.
Okay. All right, so if we've got utilizing materials and technology, it says now you got to decide, okay, I know my content that I'm teaching. I know what kinds of things I want the child to be able to do. Now I'm starting to think, okay, so what technology can I really use? So that depends on your skills. If I'm just starting out, I'm not going to go and find something so way out that I've never seen before, never heard before, and it's going to make my life a nightmare. So start small. Start with what you know. If you only know how to use Microsoft PowerPoint or Google Slides or a PDF document that one of the departments has provided to you, then use that. Start with that and see, okay, so now if you've got a starting point, how do you use that in terms of sending it out to the children, allowing them a chance to interrogate the content that's there, and then get the evidence back, because the child needs to showcase. So if you know your kids don't have access to technology at home, then obviously you're not going to say to them, email you the information. So if they don't have access, or you could say, okay, if you have access or your parents have access, ask them to email, which is great. If you've got, so the low end spec of that would be that the child is asked to just do the work and capture it in their notebooks or in a file or an exam pad, so that when they do get back to school, it's going to be, them just showcasing that evidence. But what it's going to do is it's going to accumulate all of that assessments, and then you're going to be kind of stressed at the end when the kids come back to school, because you're going to have all of that marking that you've got to get done. So typically, if you could find a means to get the child to showcase the learning now whilst they are in this online digital space, then it's going to help you a little bit later, so that it's not all overwhelming at the end when they get back to school and you've got all of this new portfolio of evidence and marking to get done. So technology tools must aid the teaching purpose. So whatever content you're trying to teach must then align to what technology you end up using in the classroom, or in this case, the virtual classroom. So your learner response. Now you start thinking about, okay, so now how's the learners going to be engaged? Are they just reading and summarizing? Are they reading and writing? Are they reading and doing a video clip? Is there a voice clip? Are they WhatsApping you? So how are they going to be doing this? How are they going to capture their evidence of learning? And because you're in a remote space, you can't see the child writing their notes. You've got to now try and create a means for which you can make sure that the child fully understands this is the content you need to get done. I expect you to be able to do it in X, Y, and Z way. And you can give them options, because then if you're in a varied classroom, for example, a child who has access to video and a child who doesn't have any would means a child who doesn't have any will just capture their summaries or write their sort of evidence, or even just capture their role play, and then they'll only share it with you when they get back to school. But those that can share in the meantime, it would be best if they can do, because then you can get going with your marking and observations of engagement during this time. So think about how are they going to do the work, and then how are they going to get their response to you? because you want to have it now whilst we're during this lockdown, because otherwise it's going to just be overwhelming for you at the end. So the next sort of element is evaluation and assessment. The first element is, can the child's assessment be evaluated? And it says, has the learner demonstrated learning? Have they shown that they've learned the lesson outcomes or the content or the topic outcomes? And then you ask the child to reflect on their own process, because what we're finding typically now is that the child is so busy making notes about what you're teaching that they're not taking stock of actually the discussion points around, or how they're learning, or the process of how they even tackle the information that they have on hand. So you want them to be reflective. So you ask them to reflect on, what do they think they need to improve on? What are the concepts do they still need help with? So those are the important sort of elements you want the child to be telling you upfront, because then your next lesson could be around those concepts that they didn't understand. So you're wanting to already build in your formative assessment into this learning dynamic, because now you have the space to actually be able to deal more deeply with these concepts that the kids are not understanding. And ask them to suggest what you can do to make it better. So you mustn't be afraid to have these comments from your kids, because ultimately, I mean, of course, you might have one or two rude kids, but generally, you know, that the children are going to be helpful in terms of saying, hey, you know what, I want to make this process easier for you and for me. How can I do this? Are there any suggestions? Is there something that I haven't thought about? Maybe I should be using a Facebook group. Maybe the kid wants to do a TikTok. I know quite a few people are doing all sorts of things, but you get them to suggest ways in which you can improve, because then you can use those sort of suggestions in the forthcoming sessions. Then as a teacher, you need to be able to evaluate and assess your own teaching. And you're saying, have I captured the learner's work? Have I got sufficient engagement from the children? What happens if only 2 children respond? What's happened to the other 35 kids in my class? What do I need to do? Do I need to send the work again? So you start evaluating your own sort of engagement around this sort of remote learning aspect. And it says, so how well did the learners cope with the activity? Now you look at their responses. Was it superficial responses? Was it deep engagement? What are the sort of elements that are coming through? Because you now need to be thinking about, what can I as the teacher do better in this learning pocket? What do I expect the learners to do more deeply? So maybe I need to tweak the questions a little bit so that I can get a more deeper, more open-ended response. And how do I change the activity to make it better? So maybe that video wasn't too wonderful. Maybe it was too long. Maybe I need to use Edpuzzle to clip it a little bit. So you now need to start evaluating that entire process. And eventually you'll get the formula right that works for you. And then you'll be a little bit better and less overwhelmed. So how do we do this? Now, if we're looking at evaluation and assessment, there's a range of different ways in which one can do that. I don't know whether, let's open it up a little bit now, just to have some group interaction. So evaluation and assessment, you'll see on my screen at the moment, there's a range of different sort of tools that one can use for evaluation and assessment. That leads to Microsoft Forms. You can use Flipgrid, which is video, Wakelet, Microsoft PowerPoint, Pear Deck, which is wonderful. If you're looking at Google Forms, Plickers, Poll Everywhere, and the range, and there's Mentimeter as well. So I just want some commentary at the moment in terms of, from your experience, what have you used for evaluating and assessing kids from a digital perspective? So digital assessments, what have you used? Any takers?
Mostly I have used PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
This is, as I'm looking to what you have on screen, Microsoft PowerPoint is the most one that I would say I used as compared to the other ones. Others are quite new to me. I've just Wakelet as well, that's new. So probably I need to do more Googling and testing and see how will the others work for me.
I think that's fantastic. Start with what you know. And Microsoft PowerPoint, you might be thinking, oh, PowerPoint again. And, a couple of years ago, people were saying death by PowerPoint. But PowerPoint is really at the moment on steroids. If you look, you're able to screen record, you're able to add video pockets, you can have live slides. There's a phenomenal amount of things that one can do, and it all depends on your skill, and it all depends on what kinds of elements you want to be including, because there's a wealth of things one can do just using PowerPoint, and really it is on steroids. The same is true for using Google Slides as well. I mean, there's a range of different things. So all tools can be used minimally or maximally depending on how far you want to go. And I think the key is how far you want to go. And I think that's brilliant. Okay, any other sort of comments around what tools you're using for assessment or in teaching at the moment?
Hello, Mashani.
How's it?
I'm good as it is. Check here. With me, I've used Google Forms together with the quiz. So obviously on the quiz, there's a Google Classroom that I've created. So if maybe I'm covering a certain section, I will put a quiz there, then the learners can respond directly to me. Then I will receive a notification through an email that so and so have submitted or they did the task. Then I can easily go and check the task that they've created. Then I can mark it on that Google Classroom. And the other one, which is your Google Forms there. With the forms, what I normally do, I create a task for my learners, and obviously my learners can get access to that particular task or work which is on the Google Classroom, and they can do it within the time frame that has been allocated to them.
I think, Jack, that's really phenomenal. Google Classroom is also one of our favorite sort of tools. When you're looking at Google Classroom, it's a repository that one can use in terms of capturing all of your lesson plans, all of unfolding your assignments. And as Jack is saying, you're able to just paste it there, assignment due 10th of April, and all of your kids in that class will get that automated sort of task in their calendars. And once the due date time has ended, that session is closed, which means a child can't then submit late. They'll have to email it directly, and you'll know exactly who's missed what. So what's beautiful there is that Jack is saying that he's now tied in Google Forms with his Google Classroom, and he has a range of different things that are there, and he's able to assess as he gets done. So Google Forms functions much like Microsoft Forms, so they're just different sort of branded elements, as you know, competitors. But in terms of offerings, it's exactly the same, just one is prettier than the other, but functionality-wise, they're both beautiful. Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Ashani. I work with Jack.
How's it?
I just wanted to add on to what he was saying. I mean, Jack's done some amazing stuff for our learners, and he's often certainly a mentor for those of us who I'm quite good at technology, but I'm a little bit like the pupils. I can TikTok, but I'm not that great at other stuff. But I wanted to add with Google Forms and Google Classroom, I'm an English teacher, and what I found very helpful was initially I was quite hesitant, but for example, we were looking at Antony and Cleopatra in grade 12. And what I would do is I would record myself doing a summary of the, say it's Act 1, Scene 3. And then afterwards, I would record myself, and then I would email that recording to myself and post it onto Google Classroom. And then with that, I would attach some questions, discussion questions. And the feedback that I got from the learners was so amazing. One of the boys just said to me, "Ma'am, this makes so much sense, because what I can do is I can go back and listen to your recording over and over again. So if I don't understand things the first time, I can, re-listen to it and pick up on things that I perhaps didn't get the first time." And I think from now onwards, we obviously we don't really know the longevity. I mean, for us as we Google Classroom and teaching online is vital. But obviously we don't know with the lockdown at the moment the longevity of it. But for me personally, I will be recording all of my literature sort of scene by scene analyses from now onwards and loading them onto our Google Classroom because it's just worked so well.
I think, Amy, you just make life a little bit more easy, because I think that's a phenomenal idea. And especially for the languages, even the social studies kind of questions where there's long sort of texts that one needs to analyze, and reading the text would be brilliant. There's also a number of resource sort of aggregators. So if you're looking at sort of elements, there are some, I think I've come across some, but let me see if I can find more Shakespearean stuff. I'll share it with you. But where there are sort of, video clips around a particular scene or dramatized version. So you're not then just only having voice, which is really brilliant, because I find that many of our kids have a subjective hearing issue. And I'm talking about my own kids also. So, they're very subjective about hearing certain things. So having a visual dynamic, a dramatization, especially when it comes to text, would be brilliant. And it would also be a fantastic way if, for example, that you've got summaries of text. So ask the kids to do the voiceovers for you, and then choose the most sort of fluently speaking, articulated childs to be the thing that because then you're looking for ways in which you can also make life a little bit easier for you. So if you know that there's a particular poem that they meant to be doing, then you ask them to already read and record that for you. So then it becomes easier as well. So I think, yes, phenomenal idea where you're doing the recording of the summaries of text and the analyses already, because then it becomes a resource that the child can always go back and have. Another way of doing that potentially is to also have mind maps. So even though mind maps is a low level in terms of having the facts of the particular topic or a concept being broken down, but mind maps are a beautiful way of children being able to, first of all, work through what is the global view of that topic that's going to be covered, all the various sections, or it could be used as a summary at the end, so that they can, or you can give them a very sparsely populated mind map, and then you say, okay, children, as they go through the various sort of concepts, they need to populate more deeply. And then at the end, the summaries that you get from the kids, you take the most advanced, or you combine sort of mind maps, and then you have the text already summarized for you. So yes, thanks, Amy, that's brilliant. Anybody else wants to comment or add?
Hi, it's Dawn. I need to know if this system of evaluation is different from the Moodle one when you use Moodle.
Okay, so if you're using Moodle, for example, much like how Moodle can set activities, I don't know whether you're an admin on your Moodle site, but if you've got for example, activities that you're setting out in Moodle. So some of them would be, one of it would be the multiple choice activities, or so you can set these kinds of tasks. And like Jack and Amy were talking about, as well as Zandile, you have aspects of Microsoft Forms that you can use. You can also use Google Forms. So Moodle is just another way of doing that. So it's similar to, but it's just a different tool that does the same thing. But I'll take you through an example now. Is there any other comments before I move on? I want to show you a forms and how we can automate the marking. And I know I won't be able to take you through in depth, but at the very least, if I can show you what's possible, and hopefully we can maybe, if you're needing more support around that, you can just be in touch with us. If it's okay, I'll just carry on. Okay, so now my next slide here is for us to, okay, here's an example. So if you can plug in this URL, please, http://bit.ly/2ehanhp, or if you have a QR code reader, if you can use your cell phone and just quickly scan that code. I just want to show you very quickly using Microsoft Forms where I've set up a test. I've set up an assessment for the children, and in this case, you being my children. So I've set up an assessment for you, and basically showcasing how you can set up multiple choice questions with pre-populated answers. And then at the end of that quiz, you basically getting a record of each of your children having completed it, you know, who's got what right, and you're basically checking whether the child has really understood that content pocket you were teaching. So if you can just capture that link very quickly, and then you can go through it, then you'll be able to see, and I'll show you on the screen now what that looks like from the teacher's side. So
Sorry,
if you just want to take yes.
There's no Limpopo province under the provinces.
Oh shucks! I've like cancelled you out of South Africa. I apologize profusely.
No, that's okay.
Just choose one. I apologize. I shall add to. Limpopo has been knocked off the list. I apologize. Okay, so if that's okay, I'm just going to take you to the form itself, and then I will show you what it looks like on my side as you're busy completing. Okay, so I just want to share my screen very quickly, and then we'll be able to see. I've got lots of screens open at the same time. Okay, so if you're in the session, I'm hoping you can see the form. Quindus, let me know if you can.
Able yes, to, we can see the form.
Okay. Right, so if you're looking at the form, so as the teacher, I've set up this form, which is the assessment. It's a test, right? So it's a test, and the general knowledge test that I've set up is how well do you know South Africa? So you can imagine you could have it on whatever topic that you're teaching, and it could be a very quick 5-question sort of thing. So Microsoft Forms, Microsoft, Google Forms, Moodle, any sort of online sort of space that you have this kind of functionality where you can set up some kind of assessment or an activity that can get the kids to respond in some kind of dynamic way. So if you look at the form, I set up this test in the meantime. So I want the name and surname. You might want to have their grade, their class instead of name of school. You will definitely want to have all of the provinces here. But I'll edit it once I'm done with this. And I set the answers. So you'll see the answers already set up here. But the important thing here is the responses. So if you look at the top of the screen, you'll see that there's 2 tabs. One is the questions and one is the responses. So you'll look now from this list, you'll see that of this link that I've shared with people, you'll see that I've got 40 responses. The average score is 5 out of 10. The status is that it's active. And what it does, it gives me a very quick synopsis of who's done what. So imagine it could be giving you a summary of all of your classes. If you're giving all of your grade 10 classes, for example, the same quiz, you can have grade 10 A, B, C, D, and then out of the list, you can just sort of see from the graphs, you know, who's lagging behind in terms of understanding that particular content. But the important thing here is also that you're able to download this results into Excel, which makes it really wonderful if you want to then manipulate. But we'll have to have another session about using forms and activities in these ways. But it's brilliant because if you look at the various answers, I just want to take you back to the questions a little while. So you'll see that the questions I have, so I tried to give you a range of different things. One is where you could add a picture and you can ask a question on it. If you're thinking about teaching life sciences and you're doing biodiversity, for example, you could have a photograph with multiple sort of hydrospheres or whatever it is that you're having in terms of, you know, biodiversity, and you say, okay, so which of the animals here depict what? So you can choose the type of questions you're wanting. I've also inserted here that you can watch a little video clip and then answer a couple of questions. So you can see that the kinds of questions you ask need not just be select an answer from the choices below. It is watch this video and then select the answer. It is look at this image. What is your thoughts around it? If you're looking at English, for example, and you're doing advertisements or you're doing cartoons or whatever elements that you're doing, you are able to insert that picture. And you'll see that Microsoft just launched Microsoft Lens, which is a way in which you can use your mobile phone. So whether it's an Android phone, Microsoft phone, it doesn't matter. You can download the app called Lens, L-E-N-S, and you're able to scan a picture. So imagine if you're scanning a little picture from your textbook. Or if you don't have Lens, you want to use something else. I think I regularly use something called Cam Studio, which is really brilliant as well. You can scan any document and you can then send it to yourself as a PDF document, you know, just to make sure that the size of the file is quite small. So you'll see that there's a range of different questions, but the whole flavor here is for you to understand that when you're setting up an assessment, you set it up as a quiz. You can give marks to each question. You can tick already the right answer so that when the child gives you the responses, the child will immediately be able to say, hey, you know what, I've got it right or wrong. So it gives individualized responses, but more importantly, as the teacher, it gives you a summary of the responses. So you'll see how many World Heritage Sites are there. 5 people have said incorrectly. 19 people have got it right, that there are 9 World Heritage Sites in South Africa, although I think you might be right if you said 8, because I think there was one that was cut off the list as of the beginning of the year. So if you're looking at it, gives you a really nice analysis in terms of, especially when you're doing item banking and you're trying to see, if you're looking at mathematics, for example, and you're trying to see what kind of, you know, type of inequalities that the kids are not able to understand from the type of questions you're putting in. And this is why Bloom's is so important. You're having low order questions, you have middle order questions, you have high order questions. And then from the analysis, you're able to very easily pinpoint what are the kinds of things you want to delve more deeply into. And generally it's the deeper questions. But if you get the kids to already be thinking more deeply, you then setting them up for a greater sort of learning experience, because you're getting them to think deeply and reflect on their own learning. So it's going to be important when you're setting your tests. And I think that is the most fundamental element about planning, why planning is so important and why it's underestimated in terms of its importance in learning. And I'll find in many of my schools that SchoolNet works in as well, you'll find that many teachers just go to class and say, well, open our textbook. Where were we yesterday? Oh, yes, we were on page 9. So today we're on page 10. And they go through the textbook in that way, which means that there's no deeper planning. And it might be that you've been teaching for years, and that's okay, because pedagogical skills are there and the content skills are there. But when you're looking at the child being able to showcase their learning, it's not being done in an effective way unless you have balance. And you need to be able to do your planning, because especially in this case where it's now remote learning, if you're done your lesson planning and all of the elements, then your half the battle is already won, because now it's just a matter of just making it a little bit better in terms of being able to share it in an online framework. So anyway, so you've got a flavor for forms, but forms, as I said, Microsoft Forms, whether it's Google Forms, whether it's Moodle activities, they all function in very much the same way, where you are able to use multiple choice. You can use grids, where the kid says, how well have you understood? 1 being 0, not understood, 5 meaning really great. So quick sort of markers in terms of where the kids are reflecting learning, but also more importantly, where you as well have some pointers in terms of what the kids need other assistance with. So I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint just so that you can see. I'm not sure whether I'm sharing. So let me see. Okay, I'm hoping that you are now back to me in my PowerPoint, evaluation and assessment. I'm just taking you through. So now let's get to the whole sort of element around, so what tool do I use? Where do I even start? What must I go through? There are thousands and thousands of tools that are available. You're thinking that you're going to go and do a search and you're going to just find some is not great. What you're going to do is you're going to find thousands. What you need to do is to find one that's kind of like the popular one, and ones that have been rated, ones that people are talking about. Do not use the ones that people are complaining about or complaining mostly about. So you want to try something new. As I said, you can stick to what you know, the ones that you're familiar with, like Microsoft PowerPoint. Really, you can do amazing things with it. So if you're a newbie, if you're a new person studying, and let's say you just got your PDFs, you've got your Word documents that you've accumulated over the years. Now you're not going to overhaul your entire teaching overnight. What you need to do is, okay, so is there any of the PDFs you can use? PDFs where you have notes, you have summaries, where you are able to send it to the child and say, hey child, here's a summary of this content pocket. But what you need to do is then attach an assessment form of some kind that says, based on these summaries that you've read, answer the following questions. So you can set up the summary already. And as I said, if you're using Microsoft Forms or Google Forms, or even Moodle, for example, or even Google Classroom, where you're integrating forms, you're then able to set questions based on the summaries, because use what you have. And it can be via PDF, or it could be via Google Doc, Word document. You can include a Word document, upload a Word document directly onto Google, your Google Suite. Or if you have Office 365, that's also brilliant. You can use your OneDrive and you can share the files. Or again, as I said, if you are just starting out, you have nothing else to do, use WhatsApp. WhatsApp the child your PDF of a maths assignment and say, hey child, here's the questions that you need to do. And, and then what you can do, even with maths, you're able to set up a form already with the math stuff. And what you can do with Microsoft Forms, as well as Google, you're able to upload your own assessment. It may need some tweaking in terms of the formats and stuff like that, but you can use one that you've already created and then just tweak it in the online space. So use what you have. As I said, my son's primary school, they didn't have any other sort of avenues. They don't use Office 365 or even Google. So all they've done is they've plugged in for each of their subjects, for each of the grades, they've plugged into D6 Communicator, a various lot of work that the kids need to go through. And the kids have access to it, and they just do the activities in their notebooks. And then the teacher's going to get a whack of stuff when they go back to school. As I said, you have the whole Microsoft Office portfolio. You also have G Suite portfolio. Those of you, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Skype. This lovely cogs at the bottom there is Google Meets. You can use Google Hangouts if you just want to chat, or you could use Google Meet, which integrates beautifully into Google Classroom. But you can also use Microsoft Teams if you're wanting. And here is the iWork, which is the Apple portfolio stuff as well. Zoom is really popular. Zoom is also not so popular as of last week, because there was a whole lot of sort of ruckus around people sort of entering sessions that they shouldn't be. But Zoom is really quick and easy as well, where you just share a link and your kids are very easily able to just see you. And I think much of education is the fact that they just know that my teacher is there. And, you know, even if it's just you reading a text, the fact that you're reading it just helps the children a lot more in terms of their social dynamic. And even if it's via web camera for like 10 minutes, that also goes a long way toward helping them a little bit in terms of this social distancing sort of element at the moment. So Zoom and Skype, really quick and easy to use if you're wanting, as I said, as a newbie, if you've got no other sort of alternatives. I should have added WhatsApp here as well, where you can do a WhatsApp call if you've got a class group going. Then you can do a quick video call with the kids and say, hey, children, you know what, I just wanted to touch base with you, how you're doing with the homework. I know it's quite a lot and it seems like you're doing a lot more, but, you know, and just chat through what sort of element. I don't know whether you want me to go through Skype or G Suite at the moment. These are very easy tools to go through. But as I said, also, if all else fails and the only aspects you have available is mail, then use Outlook and use Gmail, where you just email the work either to the parent or to the child or to WhatsApp. And then you just share the materials. I don't know whether you want me to take you through Skype and Zoom. I'm aware of time just going through, but let me try and do that very quickly. Just want to show you Skype, for example. I'm just going to open up my Skype. Okay, so if I was on Skype, I just want to share my screen very quickly. If you were using Skype as a tool, right, so I've opened up Skype. So basically, I mean, like many online tools, you'll have to sign in, you'll have to register. For Skype, it's useful for you to have a Microsoft account because Microsoft, Skype is owned by Microsoft. But you can use your Google email address as well, but it just doesn't integrate so beautifully. Remember, Microsoft likes Microsoft tools, so it doesn't integrate too beautifully if you're using a Gmail account. So once you're in a meeting, you can call any of your contacts. So basically, all you're doing is you need Skype, which is the tool, which means you need to register on it, and you need to have a internet connection. And basically, when you're looking at calling, which means if you can call anybody that is on your contacts, which means that you will need to make sure that every child in your class is on your contacts. And then you could do a video call. So it's not the best sort of element, because to have every child you ever taught on your Skype contacts is a bit of a mission, which is why generally, if you're looking at things that are, let's say, where was I? Just sharing my screen again. So if you're looking at like G Suite, for example, where you can join or start a meeting, it means as the presenter, as the teacher, you're able to have your PowerPoint ready or even a PDF document, and you have that ready and you can share your screen in this meeting mode like I'm doing now with Teams. I've got my PowerPoints ready and I can share which screen I want with the kids. So whether it's an internet resource or whether it's a PowerPoint or whether it's a YouTube video that I'm playing off the net, I'm able to share a screen, whatever it is that I'm sharing with the kids, in one platform. And I can get the kids to either join via a web link or like in Google Classroom, your kids will have to join your classroom, for example. Those of you that might be using OneNote, that's also beautiful in terms of making sure that all of your pockets of work is organized in your class notebook very easily. But anyway, so if you're a newbie, start small. So you can use WhatsApp groups, you can use your email, you can use Zoom, which is a quick meeting. Should I show you Zoom very quickly? I don't know. Let me show you Zoom very quickly. Okay, so I'm just opening a Zoom in the meantime so that it's not tricky for me to share. Whilst it's opening. Right, Zoom is really wonderful as well. I'm not sure whether you can see my screen just yet. So you open up Zoom, as I said, much like how Skype works or any of these online tools, you'll have to register for an account. Most of these are now being afforded to you free because of the lockdown. So Zoom is really also free because of the negative publicity last week. But basically, you will schedule a meeting. So let's say on a Friday afternoon from 1 to 2, you're going to have a science lesson with your grade 10s. You're going to schedule a meeting. You'll say schedule. So when you say schedule, you'll say Mrs. Naidu's Zoom meeting, maths, or what did I say? Physical science 101, Newton's laws. And then you can say how many hours you want it to be, 1 hour, half an hour, 20 minutes even. You don't want to be talking a long time, but it might be a great way to sort of just catch up with the kids. Meeting ID, you can tell it to generate. So meeting password 016922. Basically, you making sure you use these kinds of tools to make sure that no pedophiles are sort of joining your session. So you wanting to share this code with your kids directly. So 016922. So that will be my code. So I can just copy it and I can WhatsApp it to the kids and say, hey kids, we're having a physical sciences session from 1 to 2 tomorrow. Here's the meeting code. Join me. Here's the link. So once you schedule the workshop, I can say 4 p.m. I'll say schedule. And then basically, once it schedules, I'm able to copy the link. It's wanting me to sign in. It's important here to know that Zoom integrates both to Microsoft as well as to Google, as you can see. So it integrates beautifully. You'll be able to copy it from. So when you see this link that is here, this big, long, fantastic link, generally we don't want to be copying these kind of links. It's massively big. If a child tries to copy it or type it, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So what we usually do is we use URL shorteners. Those of you that are a little bit more savvy might know what they are, but I'm going to share with you very quickly. Let me stop sharing that screen and share another one with you now. So I copy that link, and then you basically go to, I'm just trying to go to my screen that has my bit.ly. I'm just trying to find my way here. There's so many things open. All right, so let me just go to my window. So if I was looking at, I don't know whether you can see bit.ly. Are you able to see bit.ly? Let me just see. Right. Okay, so I've used bit.ly. So bit.ly is bit.ly. bit.ly. If you look at the URL at the top, you'll see basically I sign into this account, I say create, and what I can do is whatever big long URL that you've got, you paste it in there, and then what it does is it shortens the link, and you'll see that basically you're then able to copy this 7-letter, is it 7 letters? 8 letters. 8-letter URL as opposed to the 50-character URL. So you will see that it's very easy to have a URL shortener. I use bit.ly, but there's tons. There's tinyURL, there's Buffly, there's goo.gl, Google. So if you just Google URL shorteners, free URL shorteners, and then you just find one that you think you like, and basically it just tracks all of your links forevermore. And I use Bitly because every link that I've ever shortened in my lifetime is available, and I can always refer to it henceforward. So just on an aside, I just wanted to Google shorteners. We'll add it to our list of resources as well. Right, so let me just get back to my PowerPoint. Right, so I'm a newbie, so I'm giving you lots of ideas around what you can be using. I'm hoping that I'm giving you sufficient ideas for what you can do and use. I don't want to be overwhelming you. So let's say I'm not a newbie. I'm now in the intermediate to advanced sort of things. I'm really feeling adventurous. I want to just, sort out all of my online learning stuff for my school or for my grade. I'm an HOD. I want to just get my teachers all organized. So now you're looking at ways in which you can be a little bit more adventurous once you've kicked out of that newbie stage. So now you're looking at G Suite. And as Jack and Amy were saying, their school is using Google Classroom. You are brilliantly able to use Google Classroom where you can organize grade 10 work. You can use math, science, every subject that the child is using, and you're able to get each of your teachers, if you're registered as a Google domain, if you're registered as a Microsoft domain, you're able to basically use the portfolios of stuff that's available. If you're a Google domain, you have access to G Suite for education. You also have access to Google Classroom, Google Sites. So you were able to then plug in all of these elements. If you're a Microsoft school, Microsoft domain, thinking about the conversation, then you have access to office.com. You have access to Office 365. OneDrive, which you can then organize in terms of the domain for your school. So then if you look at ways in which that can be organized, you can, again, per grade, per subject, you can add extra sort of elements that are not curriculum aligned, but still important skills like, building mindfulness, yoga, whatever. So if you're looking at Moodle, for example, if you're wanting to customize a Moodle site, remember these G Suite is available free, but as an educational institution, you're able to register a domain with Google, which means then all of the apps for education is then free. With Microsoft Office 365, Teams have been made available to everybody, and this is what we're currently using to deliver this exact session, and it's really brilliant once we get it all working. And you'll see that even us as an organization, we're also finding new sort of functionality and new things that are not working and ways that we are figuring it out ourselves as well. Pear Deck, this is the one at the bottom here, is really clever. Pear Deck actually works with Google as well as Microsoft, and what it does is also makes your slides and your PowerPoint work on steroids. So basically you can include a range of different forms within your slides, within your Microsoft PowerPoint. So imagine I was teaching you a little bit, and then I have a little poll in between, and I say, hey, what's your opinion on certain thing? And then it captures all of the kids' responses at the same time, which means, like I showed you the forms just now, you are able to see at a quick overview which of your kids are responding to the question, who's saying what, and you're able to then deliver that lesson based on what they've done. So Pear Deck is really brilliant, and it was released this week actually with Alice Keeler. I don't know whether you follow her. She's one of the sort of foreground leaders in terms of international space around digital learning, and she's brilliant. And she was delivering a whole lot of new tools around Pear Deck being used. So as an adventurous person, the world is really your oyster, and it depends on how far you want to go. So if you're wanting to create a Moodle sort of site, then you would, again, like you would do it with Google Suite or Microsoft tools, you're able to then create a school-wide Moodle site that you can then administrate. So some lesson ideas, I thought, you know, it would be wonderful if you could just talk about. So you could have a video, much like what Amy was talking about just now, where she summarizes the text. You're able to create, I mean, there's tons of YouTube videos. There's tons of Khan Academy stuff that's available out there. Khan Academy has also been translated into many of our indigenous languages, which means that you can create, you know, just send a link to a YouTube video and say to the kids, watch this video clip, and then you can set a quiz. As I said, using forms, you're able to automate the marking, which means at the end, you're not going to sit with an overwhelming amount of marking at the end. So you want to already have it marking or self-marking. You can ask kids to summarize. You can ask them to find definition of words. So you can ask open-ended questions around. I mean, if you're dealing with slavery, for example, in grade 7, you're saying, "Hey, children, what do you think? Who was the who was the evil guy in the story?" So you make it more relevant. You make it a bit more easier for the child to work through because you're not there to mediate the learning. What you can do is also ask the child to maybe capture points that they learned using video clip, maybe a sound bite, maybe Flipgrid, which is really also beautiful in terms of getting kids to just quickly summarize a particular topic or a concept. Or you can ask them to just capture in an online Google document or a Microsoft Word online or a Excel sheet or a PowerPoint. And you can have one class PowerPoint and you say each one take a slide and write their thoughts. Then it just becomes a little bit easier for you to work with when you need. So using YouTube videos, which is really beautiful. You can use case study articles. This is especially useful in science, in life sciences. If you're doing geography, I mean, this was brilliant. I don't know whether you saw the resources that are shared, but National Geographic has made available a range of different beautiful images, videos, interviews, documentaries. These are all available. If you're doing arts and culture, you also have access to museums throughout the world. Imagine taking a tour of the Smithsonian. Many of our babies, leave alone our teachers, have never been to the Smithsonian. So now you're looking at ways in which you can do a virtual tour. And maybe what you do in your online session is to do a tour of the Smithsonian. Say we're going on a virtual tour to wherever, to the US, or we're going to San Francisco to see, I don't know, the bay, the bridges, whatever. So if you're using case studies, for example, which is an article basically, you can ask the kids to assign themselves in groups. You can ask them to work together in a group of 4 and provide a synopsis on the case study. You can assign roles. So let's say you're doing working on natural disasters, and you say, okay, one person is going to be the researcher, one person is going to be a media strategist, one person is going to be the mayor of the town, whatever. You're giving roles so that the child can approach the case study based on a particular perspective. So now you're doing also life skills, because for a child to be being a researcher, they need to look at it from a particular eye. If you're a politician, you're going to look at it from a different eye, because then it's about not spreading panic around a natural disaster, for example. So you can think about clever ways in which you can bring in life skills, things that the child is not going to rely on you to find. And then you can use that. So case studies are a beautiful way to work with. If you're looking at podcasts, as I said, I find that our children have subjective hearing. So you're wanting them to have their listening comprehension skills honed in. So send a podcast where it's just your voice or somebody's voice. You're playing a podcast of some kind and you ask kids to reflect on the task. You can set some questions. You can ask the kids to set the questions. And then you can use those questions to ask to the rest of your class. And I think that would be really brilliant, because in the child being able to set their own questions, of course, you must ask them for the answers themselves, because then they're doing both. They're approaching it from the perspective of a teacher that says, okay, so what's the question and what would be the answer, which means they're doing the work that you want them to do anyway. So it's brilliant in terms of the ideas. Now, the resources that we've shared with you, I know we're getting to the end of our session. It feels like time's just leaving us, but so collections of online resources. TeachPitch is brilliant. There's tons of stuff. BBC, this is actually like the SABC that we have. BBC is the English version. So they also have tons of online sort of programs being rolled out. I'm not saying we must copy what they're doing, but it's great to just have a feel for what's happening in the international space. Open educational resources is a whole movement around having open educational resources. So resources are never going to be an issue for you. It's about actually finding the thing that you most need amongst the various things that are available. Maths and logic problems, I gave this to my son yesterday. He did one and then he was over. But it's brilliant. It has thousands of maths and logic problems. So even if it is one problem per day, you just give one to the child and say, hey, you know what? Here's this problem that you need to solve. Audible recordings, these are storybooks. Amazon's made them fully available to everybody. The FIT simulations is brilliant because it's math, science, life sciences, simulations, and it's brilliant. I mean, when I'm teaching maths, for example, if you're looking at the graphs and the equations and the kids find it very difficult to understand where the turning points of parabolas are, you know, they're able to see the equation, and then when you move the graph, you're able to see how the turning point changes in the function itself. So it's really beautiful and visual in terms of the child being able to understand fully, you know, abstract concepts and terms. We've also got website resources that are available through the SchoolNet.org site. But as I said, I mean, we are always available. If there's anything you need, anything you're worrying about, then you feel free to also, you know, touch base with us and see where we're at. I'll just leave it on those resources. Are there other questions? Are there worries? Let's talk.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you please share the screen again? I can't see your screen.
Oh, okay. Let me share my screen again. There's so many windows. I apologize. Sharing my screen is a nightmare because it's like, shucks, which screen am I sharing? Okay, there it is. Are you able to see? You should be seeing the resources slide.
Yes, thank you. I'm seeing it now.
Okay. All right, so tell me, are there questions? Are there worries? I hope I've given you enough sort of thinking around how to start this remote learning, or maybe I haven't, in which case please tell me so that I can help guide you a little bit more concisely. But talk to me. Let's hear your thoughts.
Hi, Jack again. Yeah.
How's it, Jack?
I'm good, man. The additional sort of softwares that you gave us, are they free of charge, if I may ask? The peer deck, the Teams, and the yeah, I think those two.
Yeah. So Peer Deck definitely is free. It's an add-on to Google. So basically, you know where you'd usually find the add-ons on the tabs. I think it's next to tools somewhere, but yeah. So if you just go to add-ons, get add-on, and search for Peer Deck, and it's easy enough for you to do. The same is true if you have Office 365, and Teams is available for free at the moment because Microsoft obviously is supporting the whole sort of element around remote learning. So Office 365 is available. So it helps if you're already a Microsoft school or a Google school, so you can choose whichever sort of version you're looking for. But yeah, Flipgrid as well. So all of these tools that I've shared, Zoom is free, Flipgrid is free, Wakelet is free, Padlet, the one that we're using for our sort of questions, is also free. I've tried to give you the free versions, but Teams is not fully free, but it's free for now. But Office 365 is definitely free, and Teams is available there. However, not all of the functionality is available, but it's available for now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Oma, it's Violet.
How's it?
How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Violet.
I'm good, thanks. I just want to find out, is it possible for you to share the slides with us?
Yes, darling. So Quinn would have sent you a PowerPoint link, but all of these will be available to you. So we'll send it after the session as well. We'll send you another link just so that you have available this particular PowerPoint, but the resources were also emailed. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Hi, Oma.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much. You've given me a lot to think about. I have already received the emails on my email address. There are a lot of resources that I'm actually thinking of using. That will make my teaching during this time very easy with the learners. So I want to say thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. I'm glad it was useful. It was very tricky because it's trying to sort of, work from the dark to try and understand what you've used, what you haven't used, and how much is too much or too less. So I'm glad that it has been useful. But as I said, I mean, we're available. So if there's anything you need, just drop me a mail, drop me a WhatsApp, whatever. I'm quick and easy in terms of that. But all of my stuff are also available should you require. So we're here to help you in whichever shape or form.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions? Have I not responded? I'm just trying to get to the Padlet from my phone. Are there questions that are there? You can ask them. Right. Okay, there's no questions. All right. Yes.
No, it's Jack again. Yeah, I was thinking of something now. No. In terms of, let's say maybe I am an accounting teacher.
Right.
In terms of maybe the content teaching of a specific subject, let's say you are also teaching accounting, and it happens that maybe you came up with some brilliant ideas, or maybe one software that you are using is working for you. Is there a platform whereby we can share those kind of ideas? And maybe for an example, I'm a fan of Zoom. I'm using Zoom and it's working perfectly for me. Maybe I've recorded a lesson for me, and maybe I want to share with one of my colleagues, or maybe someone else who might be interested in seeing on how am I using that particular platform. Is there a way where we can exchange those kind of ideas?
I think it would be brilliant. What a great suggestion, Jack. And I think, there's so many organizations that are aggregating content. There's Digo, which is a site where you can collaborate and you can have a whole range. You can even add a YouTube video of yourself and you can share the link. What I would suggest is that perhaps you share with Quinn, the person who shared all of these details. So don't attach large files, but if you can share the links to these things, then what Quinn can do is to aggregate the content and just categorize them a little bit more. And then we can maybe do a Facebook post with these resources, with your name, as well as the contribution, so that we can just maybe help other people, also find resources that are then useful for them. Great idea, Jack. Thank you. So email the links to whatever content packs or pockets that you've developed. or tools that you're using, and then we'll try and capture it for you. We could do it another way where we could have a online document and everybody can share. The only problem with that is if somebody deletes it, then everything goes. So I'd rather you just send us via email, and then we'll aggregate, and then we'll share via a Facebook post. And then once Quinn's done with it, we'll then share the link with you, if you don't mind, since we have your contact details.
No, it's fine. I still need to get permission from my headmaster first before I could say yes or no. Thank you very much.
Of course. No
Yes.
worries. Perfect.
Hi, Mashan.
How's that?
Mashan.
Yes, Zeb. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Hi, Zeb. Yes, we can hear.
Yes.
So, sorry, Zeb. Yes. So tell me about WhatsApp and ideas that you now have for working with your kids.
Okay. In the meantime, we are busy with a WhatsApp group where we are helping learners under the program of ProTech and Telcom. We created 2 WhatsApp groups for 4 subjects, that is maths, physical science, English, and accounting.
Yeah.
So it is a tutor available, and learners, they ask questions there. As the teacher, you give, let's say for maths that I'm teaching, I have to give them some work to go to practice before the session. Then I'll look for similar worked examples so that when they come and they're asking questions, I'll screenshot and post similar worked examples, and they can relate with those worked examples to what they've done. And we are also using some voice notes to clarify some issues. Although it's something that just came up now, there are still some teething problems, but for now we are seeing the learners are getting more engaged, and the participation level is growing. But I'm happy that you managed to explain a lot of things, and it is very timely that I joined this session because I'm finishing off my degree, and one of the modules that I'm doing is integrating ICT skills in teaching. And one of my assignments is to create an assessment using Microsoft Access, where I have to create 50 questions using Access, and also 50 questions using true and false. Recently, I've been involved in, I've also downloaded some videos on how to use Zoom and Google Classroom. I find it very relevant, especially in the time that we are in, and that we need to have platforms where we continually engage with our learners. I've got groups for my grade 11, grade 12 WhatsApp groups, but I think I've taken a lot of advice that you have been giving me so that I can work through these groups, just not to post things and wait for them to submit when the schools reopen. But I'm gonna tweak it now with some of the tips that you've given me. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Zeb. I think that's a great sort of plan. You know, WhatsApp is really beautiful because many people have it on their phones. So you're sure that, you know, access is available. The only issue is that when you're using it for teaching, especially with various sort of subjects and grades in one WhatsApp group, it's very easy to lose your way, because then the question, you know, moves up the chat, and then you lose your train. But the important thing for you in the WhatsApp group is to find some mechanism for the child to be able to show their own learning rather than just talk. So capture that in some way, some folder or some link or something, so that the child can add their own evidence. Yeah. All right, great stuff, Zeb. I'm glad that you're studying. It's important. Shout if you need help. Right,
Okay.
others? Okay, so good people, I think we've come to the end of our session, but if there's any other questions, you feel free to contact us via email. We're more than able and eager to assist you where we can. So thank you for joining us. Quintus will download the recording and we will include the link to the PowerPoint as well as a link to the recording itself so that you can go through again. Thank you very much for joining our session. It has been wonderful. I hope you have gained a lot, but I'm sure we will still be in touch. So based on your comments and things, we might need some, we might have some additional programs for you next week. So we're trying to have at least 2 workshops a week on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So if you have any suggestions for what more you might need. So I'm thinking the assessment one is going to be brilliant if we can set it up where you could just have a normal form versus an assessment. Using a form, and how do you automate that kind of marking, especially when you're doing subjects like English, for example, and you have open-ended questions. How do you sort of, you know, have a blended model of using some multiple choice along with some open-ended questions where you get kids to reflect on their own learning? So I think maybe next week we can do one on assessment and using forms to do that, and we can choose whichever form, whether it's Microsoft or Google. For us, it's not important either way. All right, so thank you for joining us. It has been brilliant. You be wonderful, you be safe, and take care until we meet again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.